Let me tell you something Warren Buffett learned at 25 years old. Something so harsh, so simple, and so brutally honest that it shaped every decision he made for the next 70 years. Nobody is coming to save you financially. Not your parents, not your employer, not the government, not luck, and not talent. At 25, Warren realized that the world is designed to separate impatient people from their money and reward those who understand discipline, long-term thinking, emotional control, and the power of compounding. He discovered that the biggest financial dangers are not crises, recessions, or stock market crashes. They are your own habits, your impulses, your distractions, and the lies you tell yourself when you don't want to face the truth. Warren learned at 25 that compounding does not care how smart you are. It only cares how patient you are. He realized that most people never build wealth because they start too late, quit too early, or interrupt compounding so often that their progress resets every year. He saw how people would rather seek excitement, trends, and shortcuts than stick with boring consistency. He saw how millions of people sabotage their future by making small emotional decisions that feel harmless today but become catastrophic over decades. And that was the moment Buffett understood his harshest financial truth. Life is a compounding machine, and if you don't or respect that machine, you will be crushed by it. At 25, Warren also learned the harsh truth that avoiding mistakes is far more important than chasing brilliance. He watched people lose everything not because they were unlucky, but because they refused to avoid stupidity. He saw people take loans they couldn't afford, spend money they didn't have, trust people they shouldn't trust, and gamble their future trying to impress others who weren't watching. He realized that financial ruin rarely comes from one big disaster. It comes from 1,000 small, reckless, emotional decisions. He understood that if you simply refuse to do stupid things, don't overspend, don't chase fast money, don't follow crowds, don't go into debt unnecessarily, don't sabotage your future for your impulses, you will end up wealthier than 90% of people. Buffett didn't he become rich by being a genius? He became rich by avoiding the mistakes that drain most people's lives. At 25, he learned that the road to wealth is paved not with brilliance, but with boring discipline. Another harsh truth Buffett discovered at 25 was that most people stay poor because they treat money emotionally instead of logically. He watched people buy things to impress strangers, to escape stress, to fill the emptiness in their lives, to numb their boredom, and to comfort their insecurities. He saw that poor people spend money to feel something, while rich people spend money to gain something. This realization changed him forever. He vowed to never let emotions control financial decisions. Warren learned that money is a terrible master and a powerful servant. If you let emotions control money, money will control your life. If you control money with logic, money will quietly build your freedom. Another truth Buffett learned early is the real meaning of opportunity cost. Every dollar he spent was a dollar he could no longer invest. Every dollar he invested could become $10 in the future. At 25, Warren realized people don't go broke from one decision, they go broke from failing to see what their decisions are costing them. When you buy something, you don't lose the money, you lose what that money could have grown into. This truth is harsh because it means almost every purchase you make affects your future self. Most people never build wealth because they cannot see beyond the moment. Buffett trained himself to see the future value of every dollar, and that vision guided every choice he made. He learned the harsh truth that short-term pleasure destroys long-term potential. Another painful lesson Buffett learned at 25 is the danger of lifestyle inflation. He saw how people got raises and immediately increased their spending. New clothes, new car, new apartment, new entertainment, new habits. Their income rose, but their discipline didn't. Warren called this the trap of comfort, and he knew it was the reason most people never escape the cycle of working, spending, and staying broke. At 25, he made a decision. Even if he earned more, he would not spend more unless it made him wiser, more capable, or more free. In other words, he refused to reward himself before he earned it. And because of this discipline, his money had room to grow instead of evaporate. Another harsh truth Buffett discovered is the power of focus, specifically how lack of focus destroys potential faster than anything else. Warren observed that most people fail financially not because they are incapable, but because they chase too many things. They start 10 projects, finish none, and dilute their progress across 100 directions. At 25, he began following what would later become the famous 525 rule. Write down everything you want, circle the top 5, and avoid the other 20 as if they were poison. Not because the other 20 are bad, but because they are distractions. Buffett learned that the most dangerous distractions are the ones that look meaningful but don't move your life forward. His life changed not because of what he added, but because of what he eliminated. Warren's harshest financial truths also included the concept of margin of safety. At 25, he understood a simple but brutal reality. Most people live one mistake away from disaster, one medical bill, one emergency, one job loss, one impulse, and everything collapses. He learned that wealth is not about how much you earn, it's about how much room you have to breathe. A margin of safety is the difference between panic and peace. Buffett built his life around buffers: financial buffers, emotional buffers, time buffers. He refused to live at the edge because people who live at the edge always fall. The next harsh truth Buffett uncovered was that environment is destiny. At 25, he understood that you don't rise to your goals, you fall to the expectation of the people around you. He saw how friends influence spending habits, how peers influence risk-taking, how environments influence discipline. He realized that if he surrounded himself with impulsive, chaotic, short-term thinkers, he would become one too. So he became selective, painfully selective about who he allowed into his life. He learned that environment compounds just like money does, and the wrong environment compounds in the wrong direction. Buffett's life changed because he deliberately built an environment that rewarded rational thinking, discipline, and long-term vision. Another harsh truth Buffett learned at 25 is that emotions are expensive. Fear is expensive. Impulse is expensive. Envy is expensive. Greed is expensive. Pride is expensive. He realized that the greatest financial losses in life don't come from lack of knowledge. They come from lack of emotional control. Markets crash, people panic, opportunities appear, people hesitate, trends rise, people chase. At 25, Buffett began training himself to act rationally when others panicked and to stay patient when others rushed. Emotional stability became his competitive advantage. But perhaps the deepest financial truth Buffett learned at 25 is that wealth follows identity. You cannot behave like a spender and expect to become an investor. You cannot behave like a victim and expect to become a leader. You cannot behave like a short-term thinker and expect long-term success. Wealth is not something you chase. Wealth is something you become. At 25, Warren realized that if he wanted to build a wealthy life, he had to build wealthy habits, wealthy routines, wealthy thinking, wealthy standards, wealthy patience, wealthy discipline. Wealth is a reflection of who you are when no one is watching. And the final harsh truth Buffett learned at 25 is this: people fail financially not because they are weak, but because they refuse to confront the truth about their habits. If you start telling yourself the truth about your spending, your distractions, your impulses, your excuses, your environment, your time, you will become unstoppable. Buffett didn't become Warren Buffett at 70. He became Warren Buffett at 25 when he accepted these harsh truths and reshaped his entire life around them. And if you accept these truths today, your future will change in ways that seem almost unfair to everyone watching. The harsh financial truth Warren Buffett learned at 25 did not end with realizing how money works. It extended into how life works, how people think, how habits form, and how discipline determines destiny. Because once you understand the financial forces that shape your future, you begin to see how they quietly shape every part of your life. At 25, Warren learned that the world rewards long-term thinkers and punishes short-term ones, and not just with money, but with peace, opportunities, relationships, and satisfaction. He saw that impatience is the root of almost every financial mistake people make. They invest too quickly. They quit too quickly. They chase too quickly. They spend too quickly. They abandon commitment too quickly. They sprint toward goals that require walking. And Warren realized that most people are not financially poor because of lack of opportunity, but because of lack of patience. They cannot tolerate slow results. They cannot tolerate boredom. They cannot tolerate the quiet seasons of building. They want reward today for effort made yesterday. And as soon as reality fails to cooperate, they give up. Buffett understood at 25 that patience is not passive, it is strategic. It keeps you in the game long enough for compounding to have something to work with. Without patience, compounding is impossible. Without patience, discipline is impossible. Without patience, clarity is impossible. That is why Warren built his entire philosophy around time. Time is the great multiplier. Time is the ultimate truth teller. Time is the sieve that separates what matters from what fades. At 25, he realized that if you give time to the right habits, your entire life begins to grow in ways no one expects. Another harsh truth Buffett learned at 25 is that most people are financially fragile because they build their lives backward. They chase lifestyle first and skills second. They upgrade their image before upgrading their knowledge. They build expenses before building stability. They want the rewards before paying the price. And Warren saw this pattern everywhere. People would get a raise and immediately inflate their lifestyle. They purchased liabilities disguised as assets, cars, status items, entertainment, unnecessary upgrades without ever building the foundation required to support them. Buffett learned quickly that lifestyle must be the final step of wealth, not the first. You build skills first, then value, then income, then investments, and only then lifestyle. When you reverse the order, you become a prisoner to your own image. Warren built his foundation in silence. He built his skills obsessively. He built value long before the world cared. And because he developed competence before comfort, freedom followed him for the rest of his life. This is a harsh truth because it means most people sabotage themselves, not because they are unintelligent, but because they are impatient for the appearance of success rather than the substance of it. At 25, Warren also learned the brutal truth about self-deception. He realized that people do not fail financially because they lack knowledge. They fail because they refuse to face the truth about their own behavior. People tell themselves comforting lies. I'll save later. This purchase doesn't matter. I deserve this. I'll start investing next month. There is still time. But time is not infinite. And Warren saw that denial is the most expensive habit in the world. Every year that passes without building wealth makes future wealth harder. Every impulsive decision today steals from the future version of you. Every emotional purchase plants a seed of regret. And every time you lie to yourself, you strengthen a pattern that will one day define your entire financial life. Buffett learned early that honesty with yourself is the foundation of every long-term success. He treated his habits like investments honestly, rationally, without excuses. And that honesty allowed him to see patterns others couldn't see, opportunities others overlooked, and risks others ignored. Another harsh truth Warren Buffett learned at 25 is that wealth is quiet and poverty is loud. People who are struggling financially want everyone to see what they have. People who are financially stable have nothing to prove. He noticed that those who talk the most about money often have the least of it, because real wealth is built internally long before it becomes visible externally. Warren learned to ignore noise, ignore trends, ignore showmanship, ignore comparison. He focused instead on building substance. You will never see Buffett showing off, bragging, or flaunting his wealth. That is because he learned early that confidence comes from capability, not consumption. People inflate their lifestyle to mask their insecurity, but Warren S. humility became his greatest advantage. Humility keeps you learning. Humility keeps you patient. Humility keeps you rational. Humility keeps you open to correction. Humility keeps you aligned with long-term thinking. And humility prevents you from self-destructing when ego gets loud. Buffett realized that ego is the enemy of every investor and every human being trying to build a stable life. At 25, Warren also learned a truth that most people refuse to accept. Money flows to people who solve problems. It does not flow to people who complain, procrastinate, or wait for permission. He realized the world does not reward effort. It rewards value, and value comes from skill. He saw two people working equally hard but producing completely different outcomes because one had valuable skills and the other didn't. That is, when Buffett understood that income is not tied to fairness, it's tied to usefulness. At 25, he dedicated himself to becoming a person of immense value, a person who could analyze businesses, understand numbers, think clearly, control emotions, and make rational decisions. He built skills that compound. He knew that the market does not care how badly you want success. It cares how valuable you are, and the more valuable you become, the less effort you need to earn the same or greater results. Buffett's life is proof that skill compounds just like money does. Another harsh truth Buffett discovered is that emotional spending destroys lives quietly and gradually. He saw that most financial problems are not math problems, but self-control problems. People spend to feel good. They spend to cope. They spend to escape. Buffett recognized this pattern early and rejected it completely. He trained himself to delay gratification, to separate feelings from financial choices, to choose logic over impulse. Warren knew that every dollar emotionally spent today is a future burden. Every impulsive purchase makes tomorrow harder. Every unnecessary expense steals opportunity from your future self. He understood the cost of emotions, and that understanding made him wealthy long before his bank account reflected it. At 25, Warren also learned that your environment determines your destiny. He surrounded himself with thinkers, readers, disciplined individuals, and patient investors. He avoided people addicted to drama, to rushing, to shortcuts, to shiny objects. He studied people as habits more than their words. He saw that your results reflect your surroundings, and he created an environment designed to nurture long-term thinking. He chose mentors who were wiser than him. He chose friends who challenged his thinking. He chose to live far from noise, hype, and distraction. Buffett built a world that supported his future self, and he realized that if you want to change your life, change who you spend time with, because willpower is weak, but environment is powerful. Another painful truth he learned is that most people quit right before compounding rewards them. They work hard for a few months, see no progress, become discouraged, and go back to old habits. Warren understood that compounding punishes the inconsistent. It rewards only those who remain loyal long after motivation fades. At 25, he decided he would be the kind of person who stays with boring habits, who stays with rational decisions, who stays with long-term investments, who stays with predictable routines. He learned that the difference between people who win and people who fail is not talent, but the willingness to continue doing the right things long after the excitement disappears. But the harshest truth Warren Buffett learned at 25, the one that shaped every rule he followed thereafter, is this: your financial life is a mirror of your choices, not your upbringing, not your boss, not the economy, not luck, not your past.
your choices. And if your choices change, your life changes. Warren realized that if he simply made fewer bad decisions and more rational ones, if he avoided emotional traps, if he removed distractions, if he lived below his means, if he learned constantly, if he invested patiently, if he protected his time, if he stayed humble, his entire future would transform. And it did, because when he was 25, he accepted a truth most people avoid. Your habits are compounding whether you like it or not. And your future will be determined not by what you wish for, but by what you repeat. Warren Buffett didn't become Warren Buffett at 65. He became Warren Buffett at 25, when he accepted these harsh truths and made them part of his identity. And if you are willing to accept these truths today, not tomorrow, not next week, but today, you can reshape your financial destiny just like he did. Not through shortcuts, not through luck, not through genius, but through patience, clarity, consistency, and a refusal to lie to yourself. Because the harshest financial truth of all is that wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in quiet years of disciplined choices. And if you start making those choices now, even imperfectly, your life will compound in ways that seem impossible to those who never learned what Warren Buffett learned at 25.